You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
All right, welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health in cinema, television, and popular culture and how it is portrayed. What did they get right, what did they get wrong, and what should you know about mental health? I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a screenwriter as well as a professor of screenwriting, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, America's psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Jones, who, as well as being just the second sexiest brother in the Jones family, is a general and forensic psychiatrist.
Second sexiest brother in the Jones family, huh? Wow.
You're top two, man. You're top two.
I didn't know that we had another brother.
Ooh, ouch. We wanted you to start your week off right with our podcast, and we drop a new episode every
because then you wouldn't be first. See,
oh, thanks, Josh. I'm an absolute fucking moron. Okay, we drop new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. We've switched our format. We used to drop an episode every Monday, kind of. But now we're going to do 2 days a week because we have been enjoying talking more about popular culture. So we're going to split it up and talk about a movie and then sort of the applications of some of the mental health stuff, as well as some popular culture stuff on Thursday. So yeah, today, in honor of the recent passing of screen icon and all-around badass Gene Hackman, we're covering the 1992 revisionist Western film Unforgiven. Unforgiven was directed by and starred Clint Eastwood alongside Hackman and Morgan Freeman. It was only the third Western to win the Oscar for Best Picture. Josh, in terms of mental health, tell us what we're going to cover today.
So Unforgiven gives us a great opportunity to talk more about despair and about resilience and how to build that, but also to really debate the central theme of the film. Can people really change, or are they just who they are?
Good stuff. And I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about the psychology of murder. This is my favorite film of all time. And it's funny because I'm not really a Western fan. But this to me
isn't really a Western.
Well, no Western is really a Western. There's always an underpinning of a human story, no matter what you're doing. But that was just a dick thing to say.
Yeah, it totally was.
You made a really
fuck
good,
right off.
You made a really good
totally
point.
Did. Yeah.
And then
this is called a revisionist Western.
No. Let me screenwrite explain to you, Josh. Let me writer's plan this to you.
Well, I assume you're going to use just 3 words, where I would have used 50.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, you should. But this story centers on William Money, the Clint Eastwood character, who some argue, by the way, and I don't know that I'm one of them, but some argue that this gives a name to the Man with No Name. Some people call this the 4th film in the Man with No Name trilogy. It would obviously not be a trilogy if there's 4 films.
Shout out to you, Scott Sims.
Scott Sims. So this would be the 4th film. It gives a name. Anyway, so he is a retired reformed killer. He's a widower struggling to raise his kids on a failing pig farm. But years ago, he was a notorious outlaw, a cold-blooded murderer, but now he's trying to live an honest life. Years ago, people didn't know his name, interestingly enough. That peace is shattered when a young, cocky gunslinger called the Schofield Kid arrives with a proposition: a bounty on 2 cowboys who brutally disfigured a prostitute in the rough-and-tumble town of Big Whiskey, Wyoming. I don't know if there is a Big Whiskey, but just based on the name, I want to visit. It just sounds like a fun town. Desperate for money, William Money, despite his reluctance, decides to take the job. He recruits his old partner, Morgan Freeman, and the two ride out. But Money is not his old self. He's rusty, he gets really sick, and the weight of his past is heavy. Big Whiskey is ruled by Little Bill Daggett, a ruthless sheriff, played brilliantly by Gene Hackman. Rest in peace, Gene. Little Bill is a self-appointed lawman who enforces his own brutal brand of justice. He's already made it clear that bounty hunters aren't welcome. As Money and his crew arrive, the film delves into the moral complexities of violence. We see the brutal reality of killing, the lingering guilt, and the way violence begets more violence. Money's past is not romanticized. It's a burden that he carries. Morgan Freeman, unable to stomach the killing anymore, decides to leave, but is captured and tortured by Little Bill. And this sets Money and Little Bill on the ultimate path of death and destruction. The film culminates in a chilling showdown where Money reverts to his old self killing everyone in the bar and threatening to burn everybody's house down in what is one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema. Okay. So yeah, I've
just like the end of The Notebook.
Yeah, also a great movie. Also a good ending. Okay, Josh, let me ask you some questions, and
Jesus.
you might have to. I know I'm usually hosting. You might have to bring me back from just talking about how much I love this film.
That's all right.
But I'm going to do.
It is a great film. I mean, it won an Academy Award for Best Picture. Clint Eastwood won for Best Director. Gene Hackman won for Best Supporting Actor. I think it won a fourth Oscar as well. And it hit at a very formative time in our lives. I would think I was a sophomore or junior in high school. Our dad loved this movie. Our dad loved Clint Eastwood and his movies. This is an important movie for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and as a kid, it obviously hits different than as I grew older. But the thing that I love about this movie, and the reason why it is my favorite, from just a screenwriting standpoint, my favorite film, is, from my opinion, and I've shared this before, all films, all stories are really just about love or murder. And this movie actually talks about and tackles what it's really like to kill, what the true psychological effects are of murder, and what it actually is like. I think it's fascinating because I think that killing people, and I've never killed anybody, but I think it's one of those things that just leaves that indelible mark on your soul, and you can never be the same. I once wrote a screenplay where I took the theme that God leaves you when you murder somebody, and all of a sudden the world becomes cold and distant, and when you commit murder, God or your spirituality leaves you, and you live the rest of your life without God or without a spirituality. That's a theme. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it's how I feel about it. Josh, you were in the Army.
I was.
You've talked with soldiers. I'm sure you've talked with people who have murdered. Talk to me about what these people go through. Talk to me about some of the things that they've talked about. Like what is it like to really take a life?
Yeah, murder and killing are different things. And I think that's important. I think that's important to understand. Murder is a legal term. That means something different than killing. So when we break it down, let's just talk about killing first, because look, our culture romanticizes killing. Even in most fictional portrayals, the killers are sometimes anti-heroes. And even some people that we think are just glorious heroes have killed millions of people. Luke Skywalker was a mass murderer. There were millions of people on the Death Star, and he killed them all. So, we glorify it. But the truth is that it's pretty difficult to cross whatever evolutionary barriers we have against taking the life of another person. Right. And it does change the killer forever. Most people are not sociopaths. Most people have a tremendous amount of empathy for others. And even in the military, where we try to, in service of the country, try to break down those barriers so it becomes easier to kill if you have to, if you're commanded to. You can't take that all away for most people. And so people who have killed can absolutely suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, can absolutely have tremendous guilt and think about it for the rest of their lives. Not all do, right? Everybody is different, but it is a very traumatic thing to take the life of another. And it becomes even more traumatic, we've found, the closer you are, the more brutal it is to killing somebody. It's very different from shooting somebody from a sniper or pressing a button that drops a bomb on somebody.
Right.
That it
drone operators.
Yeah, that it is to kill somebody with hand-to-hand with a knife, or in the case of Schofield Kid, very close to somebody, even with a gun. Mm-hmm. It was basically hand-to-hand combat.
Right. In oddly an intimate setting too, because the guy is
guy's
going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's every time that kid opens a bathroom from then on, he's probably going to see, you know, that guy sitting on the toilet.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I just think this movie is absolutely fascinating. So, it all kind of builds to the culminating moment where Clint Eastwood kills everybody in the bar.
Yes.
And they do such a good job of setting it up that it is hard to kill. So that final scene where if it was a traditional Western, that scene would drag on and on. It'd be 5-7 minutes long. There'd be a lot of people like jumping over tables and
Right.
you know, popping out of whatever. If you watch closely, everybody that he's killing is like shooting the ceiling. They have no idea what they're doing. Once they're engaged in the act that they know they're going to need to be in, which is a gunfight, they're absolutely panicked to the point where they cannot process what they're doing.
Sure.
And I loved that element because it wasn't making him look like a killer who was just better than all these gunslingers. These gunslingers were just normal men who did not want to be there, who did not want to be doing what they were doing. And I just thought that was really interesting. And I think that there is something to, we are called to do things sometimes. You know, like we are called to do things where our duty compels us. But I think that in this case, where you're essentially joining a mob, it's harder to be compelled to that duty because of the nature of killing. And I think you nailed it with there's an evolutionary block to killing. There's evidence of that, right? Of the evolutionary block.
Yeah. There's evidence. There's more theories. They're pretty well established. I mean, from sociologic studies. So absolutely. I think there's all these barriers, there's all these blocks, and I think that becomes very important to understand when you start to talk about the character of money. Because I think the obvious question to ask about him is he a psychopath?
Right.
And I don't think that there's a incredibly clear answer. I think that he shows that he has some empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he looks, he's clearly loved his wife. So I think, is he a tried and true psychopath? No. But his barrier to jumping into sociopathic behavior is pretty thin, and the key looks like it's alcohol.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's alcohol.
It looks like it's alcohol. He said when he was killing all those men when he was younger, he was drunk all the time.
Right.
And then when he sobered up for his wife, it left him. And then you'll note when the shit went down, he slugged back, I think, 3-4 shots of alcohol to pierce that barrier.
Well, and even before
that barrier.
Even before that, he gives the advice to the Schofield kid, where he sees the Schofield kid is now fully broken. He's fully broken down. And he says, keep drinking, kid.
Yeah. So that's what pierces his barrier. I mean, and alcohol, of course, is a disinhibitor.
Right.
And so I think that makes a lot of sense for this character.
Look, I get it.
Looking back, I thought that was very well done.
I get it because when I start drinking, it's murder on the dance floor. No.
Sure. No, that's fine. That's fine. No, that is totally fine. I want to reference everybody back to our early Saltburn episode. If you haven't watched that, you need to go back and see our Saltburn episode because you'll never listen to that song the same way again.
I completely disagree.
But anyways, that's how he pierced that barrier. So was he a psychopath? I don't think he was.
That's so interesting to me.
It was a thin line.
Because there is just something to be said about like the time, and yeah, obviously there's a lot of things that we have to just take as givens, but the Old West was fraught with danger, and you had to kill, blah blah. You kind of get used to it. It's just a different world than the way that you and I, or anybody in like modern day, if someone would had to kill somebody, it's just a different time. It's a different time. It's a different experience. There are more dangers in the Old West.
Well, laws work. I mean, we want to talk about these barriers to killing people. Sure, we have these evolutionary barriers as well, but there's also social barriers. If we didn't have laws against killing people, there would be a lot more killing.
Totally. I recently saw like a mini documentary about this woman. I should have had this prepared, but she was a performance artist who for 6 hours just sat at a table and was like, I will accept the responsibility for anything you do to me. And by the end of the 6th hour, men were cutting her, spitting on her. They were just doing all of these really heinous things. And it was like, yeah, the second that barrier breaks down, we start just turning into real jerks. Okay, let me pivot a little.
And everybody's threshold and barriers different.
Right.
Yeah, right. We're on a spectrum. We're on a sliding scale with a whole bunch of different human behaviors, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and murder is one of those things, or killing, because there is a difference. You're right. Killing is one of those things where if anybody says to me, "Oh, I know I could kill to protect my family," I think it's one of those things where I would say, "No, you don't." I don't think you really know if in the moment you could cross that barrier and take a life. I think that what I've learned through talking with you, and you suggested reading a book, I think it was called On Killing.
On Killing, yeah.
And the number of soldiers who refused to fire or fake fired, they would shoot above their target. I think that there is just a massive evolutionary block to killing. And that's probably a good thing. Okay, Josh, let's pivot to the second point, because I want to talk just a little bit about right and wrong, because we're getting to laws, we're getting to justice, and there's a difference between legal and just.
Sure.
William Money is the hero in this. He's less just than Gene Hackman's character. Gene Hackman is trying to stop the murder of a very bad person, but he's trying to stop a murder. And William Money is a hired killer. But we're rooting for Clint Eastwood. And I don't know that we're rooting for the wrong guy. I think that there is a difference between justice and laws. And I think that that's part of what makes this movie so interesting. Who's right?
Man, really good question. So Gene Hackman is trying to stabilize his small little civilization the best he knows how. And how he knows is through brutality. I don't want to brush aside the misogynist double standard that they portray in the beginning of the movie, where, the justice for slashing up the face of a woman is kind of brushed over.
There is no justice. There's no justice for her.
Right. So, but he's trying to hold together a civilization out in an
uncivilized place.
An uncivilized place for the white man. Let's also, you can't brush away that kind of stuff either. Yeah. At this point, as best he knows how. And I think looking at it from that perspective, the ends justify the means for him, and he sees that there's lawlessness coming, that this very thin facade of civility could be torn down by just a couple people, and he's terrified of that. I want to direct listeners' attention to a series that's going on right now on Hulu called Paradise, and there's a very similar dynamic.
We should just cover Paradise, because you are like a Paradise freak.
Because it's a great show. Josh in Paradise sitting in a tree. No, it's a great show, but one of the antagonists in that, the character Sinatra, played by Juliet Nicholson, is kind of doing the same thing that Little Bill does, trying to hold together society as best she knows how, with very brutal, unjust means.
Right. And unjust just meaning not legal.
Unjust meaning not just.
Okay. Do you think there's a difference, Josh, between justice and legality?
Yes.
I do too. I do too. And there are times where, if somebody does something and it's against the law and they get caught, I think that they should be punished. I also don't have any problem with the fact that they did it.
Look, America was founded on rebellion against unjust laws.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Point.
I think so too.
Yeah. And one of the this is a theme that I love to discover, and I'm writing a feature film right now about exactly this. But it has to do with when there is a violent act, there cannot be justice because you can't ever make the person whole. When you steal something from someone, you can get it back to them. There can be retribution paid. The person can feel satisfied. Like somebody breaks into my car, there can be punishment. I can get money back. I could sue them for damages. I can be made whole again. I can actually feel, okay, I feel good. You can't do that with a violent act. There's no justice. There's no possible way to get full justice and make the person whole again. And I think that that's, in some semblance, what justice is the ability to make somebody whole again. And when there is a violent act, that's impossible.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think I take issue to your point that you can have restitution if you get the your property back, but you don't get your sense of safety back. You don't get your sense that this can't happen to me. You don't get the thin facade back that we are safe.
Yeah, but I still think it's possible. Like, I don't have that thin facade. So my point is that, like, I can be made whole. And that's just me, but I can absolutely be made whole if there's a crime that doesn't hurt my physical person or hurt, the person of someone I love. Sure. I can be made whole, and I think a lot of people can.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the big debates that pervades our society's views and debate around the death penalty.
Right.
Does taking that person's life, does the sanctioned killing, the state-sanctioned killing of the perpetrator provide more justice than keeping them in prison for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, and let me cue that up because I do want to talk about capital punishment. Because Unforgiven is my favorite movie. Unforgiven contains my favorite line of screenwriting ever written. The Schofield kid is talking about how interesting it was that he just walked in and shot this guy while he was in the bathroom. And William Money says, "It's a hell of a thing killing a man. You take away everything he's got and everything he's gonna have." And I've just always loved that line. And this is why I don't believe in capital punishment. You take away too much. You're taking away everything, not just everything he is. You're taking away everything he can be, or she. I've never believed in capital punishment, but I also don't know that sometimes killing isn't just. So I'm having a tougher time, with this one. I think from a societal standpoint, a civilized society cannot put people to death. It's too much. It's too much of a bridge too far. It has nothing to do with, hey, maybe that person's going to be innocent one day. I think that when war is declared, if somebody surrenders, then they shouldn't be killed. That's where the ability to kill ends. So I've never been a capital punishment person. Do you agree with me on that, or are you pro capital punishment?
I agree that you have never been a capital punishment person.
Okay.
Yeah. I have gone through a significant journey about this. I actually remember writing my first report about capital punishment in the 7th grade.
Sure.
And poor Mrs. Cockrell was like, "Do you want to write about something else?" I was like, "Nope, gonna write about this." I have gone back and forth on this topic my entire life. I think that there's I don't know where I sit on this. I do sit on the side that I think our current American justice system is probably too contaminated by long-term institutional bias against historically underprivileged classes to be considered fair around this topic. So in that case, I think we can't do it right now.
Okay, but Josh, a non-institutionally biased system is impossible.
I will be the first to shove you meatbags under the bus when our robot AI overlords take over.
Okay, last thing on capital punishment I want to say. Obviously, I'm sort of anti it. I do think that every grocery store should have snipers on the roof, and if you don't return your grocery cart, they can take you out. But that's the one.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Also in restrooms if you don't flush.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about that scene with the Schofield kid, because it's a great scene in the standpoint of he starts at one place and he ends at one place, and it's a complete reversal of his entire being. And
Sure.
It takes place in one scene, and it's believable. He enters the scene very proud of himself. He's just killed his first guy. He admits that this is his first guy when he says that he's, killed before. He's like, I'm a badass now. I'm a gunslinger. And we see that none of that is true. We see that
Sure.
he's like starting to break down and he's having an issue with it. And in the end, William Money asks for his Schofield because he's going to go, kill everybody. He gives it willingly, and he says, you can keep it. You can keep the money. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm not like you. I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah.
He's going to carry that with him the rest of his life.
Sure seems like it, yeah.
I want a quick answer to that as to whether or not that's true, because then I want to pivot to talk about veterans. But that's accurate, right? He's going to carry this with him the rest of his life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And we can see that in the emotionality of the scene, how quickly he changed. That was traumatic as hell.
Right. Okay. That's trauma he's going to carry the rest of his life. It's obviously true that not all veterans kill people. You can serve and have never even been in combat.
For sure.
Man, I think it's just one of the absolute blights of our society that we don't take care of veterans. If they have PTSD, if veterans come back and are having a problem reintegrating into society, there's a reason. There is a traumatic reason. And maybe that's painting too much with a broad brush, but we have asked these people to do something for us that is really hard. Can we just take care of them? Can we just get them the resources they need? Because it's trauma, and we ask them to do it. It's like if there was a family and we asked the dad or the mom to protect in some heinous way and then just pretended like it never happened. It's ridiculous. And I'm not even a veteran.
Sure.
I'm not even a veteran,
Yeah.
but I certainly care. I certainly care about these people, and the way that we've treated veterans, I don't understand.
Well, I sure wish we would. And you hear all these stories about how the VA does not take care of veterans or makes it harder, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I sure wish we would. Anybody who's going to put their life on the line to defend their country should be taken care of more than we are. Now, that's not at all to denigrate the very hardworking men and women who provide care through the VA and through other veteran services.
Oh, of course. Everybody
But
who's
yeah,
already there,
we need
kudos.
we need to put more resources into this, especially as we learn more and more and more about the harmful effects of exposure to combat. Not even just if you were shot at, but if you were in a combat zone, it can be traumatic. So I absolutely agree, and
I know this is going to probably clock for people as me just being an absolute leftist. But at some point, we're going to have to talk about the trauma of trying to navigate the healthcare system and insurance companies.
Right.
It is awful. It is awful. I saw just a TikTok the other day where a guy was arguing a bill, and it was $600 for a life-saving ambulance ride, and he didn't have insurance on him, and he gave them his insurance later to his insurance company, and he got a bill for $1,300. and the actual bill was $2,500. The insurance company took care of half of it, and he was left with a bill of $1,300. So he had to pay more because he had insurance, and he wanted to go back to the discounted price. I have been trying to find a doctor because apparently I have ADHD, according to 3 different doctors and 1 psychologist. Can't find anybody who can prescribe. Can't even find anybody to talk to about it. When I was in my darkest depression, I could not find a psychiatrist that was in network. I mean, it's impossible. Every time I've submitted a claim, it gets rejected for one reason or another. It's traumatic. It's just traumatic.
Yeah.
It's so traumatic that somebody went out and shot somebody.
Well, obviously that was a horrendous crime and not anything anybody should do. Yeah, it is traumatic to try to navigate our healthcare system. Even my family, with me as not just a doctor, but a doctor who has spent significant amount of time in the administrative world trying to figure out how to make this easier for the citizens that, in our local hospital district. It's really tough. And we can talk about a whole bunch of reasons why that is, and it is so complex to talk about all the reasons. It is very difficult.
Yeah, it's true. Even like you said, even in your own family, it is hard to get help. Anytime I'm having a psychological issue and I try and talk to Josh about it, he'll run to the bathroom, or all of a sudden just need to do something somewhere else. So I don't know if you.
That's so fucking not true. You're such an ass. You were such an ass.
Also, I was sitting on that.
Such an ass.
Yeah. Okay. So Josh, there's not a whole lot else I want to talk about with Unforgiven. One of the things that I think is absolutely fascinating, that you and I sort of talked about in the pre-meeting was resiliency, and how that has an effect in this movie, how it's portrayed in this movie. The resiliency that you can see among people who lived in the Old West, versus sort of the need for resiliency now. And we're going to talk about that when we come back in a couple days. And so I want to, encourage our listeners to tune back in. But we're going to talk about that, in Unforgiven and in real life.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about some things that you can do, some concrete things you can do to try to increase your own resiliency, especially in this, in this very difficult time that we're living in. At least very difficult psychologically.
Yeah. Okay. But that's all I've got for today. So thank you as always for watching or listening to Cinemental and our coverage of Unforgiven. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what you'd like us to cover next. You can watch my companion series, The One Thing, where I take a deeper dive into screenwriting, both available on the Large and in Charge YouTube channel. Follow Dr. Josh Jones, America's psychiatrist, on Blue Sky. This has been a Large and in Charge production. For Josh Jones, I am Jeff Jones, and we will see you in a couple days for a continuing discussion of Unforgiven and resiliency.